Welcome to the Pizza Buffet, powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook here on the Hammer Betting Network. We are live on the Forward Progress channel on YouTube and at Forward NFL on Twitter. If you're not following the Twitter account, please do so at Forward NFL. There will be updates in terms of programming for the course of the next few weeks with the NFL playoffs on the way. As usual, I'll run through today's NFL card, top to bottom, rotation number order. I'll lock in any bets that I think are still worth making, and I will lock in all bets against Pinnacle's lines, as Pinnacle is the official sportsbook partner of the Pizza Buffet. Pinnacle, the world's sharpest sportsbook, and now available to Ontario residents. Find out what professional bettors have known for decades. Pinnacle is where the best bettors play. You must be 19 plus in Ontario. And again, please play responsibly. Not available to U.S. customers. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate everyone who's jumped in on the YouTube already. Few orders of business before I get into this week's games. As usual, if you're watching on Twitter, totally fine, acceptable. But if you want to get in on the conversation, jump in over to the YouTube channel. It's in the link to the tweet. Hop on over to YouTube. We do see the comments, or I do see the comments in real time as the show goes on, and I can answer any questions in real time. Any comments on Twitter, they just go out into the abyss. If you are in the YouTube channel, make sure to hit that like button if you do enjoy the content that we put out pretty regularly. Also, subscribe to the channel. You can hit that bell notification button to get notified any single time that we go live here on the Forward Progress channel. Okay. Week 18. Anyone who's been watching over the course of the season or the course of previous years, going on 5 years now that I've been doing this, I often preach making your bets earlier in the week. If we look at the betting market now, Pinnacle Sportsbook's taking $100K on NFL sides. It's more challenging to win on a Sunday morning. I personally bet for a living, and I don't think that I can win betting the NFL on a Sunday morning. Bet earlier in the week. Week 18, as I go through this card, we'll see all the line movement that happened over the course of the week. You probably missed out on a ton of value. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out which way the sides were going to move in this Week 18 market. So please remember that going forwards. Easier to bet earlier in the week, easier to get ahead of market earlier in the week. And I've said my piece on that. Bunch of people DM'd me because I gave props at the end of the show last week and they went really well. Whatever. I will give out props at the end of the show again today. I'm not a huge props bettor personally. I do like to fire some on a weekly basis that I like. Last week, I think I gave out 8 on the show. This week will be much less than that. I barely bet any props this week, but I'll tell you what I'm rooting for altogether. I mentioned it in the open. Bet responsibly. We had 2 Saturday games yesterday. Most of you out there probably bet the Saturday games, or at least one of them. And I'm not suggesting that you lost them. Maybe you won them. However, if you did lose anything on Saturday, probably not a great idea to wake up and figure out, wake up on Sunday and figure out how you're going to get your money back. Sports betting, it's cliche. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. But don't let yesterday's results impact what you're going to do today. Approach it with a clear mind. I know that's challenging for some to do so, but really, really try to, stick to that. Don't chase losses. Very important that you don't do that. Last thing before I get into this week's card, programming schedule. So I will be back with Clive Bixby here on the Forward Progress channel tonight, 10:30 Eastern time. Same as usual. We're going live during Sunday Night Football, Packers and Lions. Obviously, the NFC playoffs will not be decided by then. We will still approach the show in the same format as we typically do. We'll probably start with the AFC, break down the early lines for the AFC matchups in the playoffs. Then we'll shift over to the NFC by the end. And same exact show as usual. This will be the last Forward Progress show of the season. We're switching to a different programming schedule for the playoffs, which makes a little bit more sense. very difficult to do forward progress, especially when you have Monday Night Football next week, which is going to impact lines and so on and so forth. So this will be the last one for myself and Clive this year. And I suggested off the top to follow at Forward NFL on Twitter. We will post the programming schedule for the playoffs, but we tend to do more shows throughout the week and bring in a variety of guests for those shows. So stay tuned for that. In terms of the programming schedule for Hammer HQ, same as usual, me and Suma tonight, pregame, halftime. That's on the Hammer HQ YouTube channel if you want to subscribe to that as well. All right. Real quick questions about golf. And will we be doing stuff for the Hammer for golf? Yes, but it'll pick up after football season is done. Football's king. Do as much football as we can, and then we'll move on. But yes, we do plan on at some point or another covering every single sport. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. You want curling? We'll do curling. We probably won't do curling. Bad example. Golf, MMA. We've already branched into some MMA coverage with the MMA analysis, stuff like that. Okay. Per usual, I do see your comments in real time. The chats have been really picking up, which is great. That means I might miss something here or there, but I'll try to get to as much of it as possible. As Will says, get on with it, mate. All right. Full transparency. I'll go through every single game. I don't think there's going to be a lot of bets today. But we'll do it anyways. Bringing in lines courtesy of Betstamp. You can download Betstamp on Android or iOS. You can check out the website, betstamp.app. That's .app. You can use it to shop lines. You can use it to track your bets. You can use it to find other winning bettors. There's about 1 million different use cases. I highly suggest you use it. Rotation number order. Obviously, the NFL has moved things around in terms of time slots. So we're starting with a late game here, but I'm just going top to bottom. Bear with me, and I will explain the scenarios for a lot of these games as we go. Rams and Seahawks. So, market has moved towards the Rams as the week has gone on. We saw some 7s early in the week, although those were pretty heavily juiced towards the Rams, down to 5.5. Total lower at Pinnacle than everywhere else. So 41, Pinnacle taking a stance in market. Everywhere else is 41.5 on this game. Okay, so first and foremost, Week 18 in the NFL is a different beast, but you tend to find these situations where teams need to win to get into the playoffs. And Seattle is in that situation today, where they need to win or else they have no hope. And historically speaking, the teams that need to win in Week 18 or previously Week 17 are horrible bets against the spread. Going on decades now, we're talking about a 38% hit rate in this millennium, basically, on teams that need to win in the final week of the season. And part of the reason for that is there is typically a little bit of inflation on those teams in the final week of the season because of the need to win factor. However, markets over time tend to catch up on things. And we have 3 teams today that are in this situation. It's going to be Seattle, it's going to be Pittsburgh, and it's going to be Miami. And I'll talk about each of those games, but I don't think the inflation on the teams that need to win is super high. With that said, pretty strong lean to the Rams in this game. My number in the game is less than 5.5. However, the difference between a 5.5 and a 4.5, let's say what my true number is in the game, is not very much. So, very difficult for me to advocate. Like if I woke up this morning, am I going to bet the Rams plus 5.5? Maybe, but probably not. Pretty clean injury report for the Rams. Obviously still without Aaron Donald. Obviously still without their center, Brian Kelly. It's the Seahawks that are dealing with injuries. Tyler Lockett expected to play. Their left guard, Damian Lewis, who has been very solid this season, turned his ankle in practice this week. Expected to go, but keep an eye out for Damian Lewis. Ryan Neal at safety would potentially be a big blow to the Seahawks defense. He's been one of their better defenders this year. Pete Carroll seemed pretty pessimistic about him on Friday, which was, I'm not a big fan of Seattle's defense to start with. Start taking out playmakers, I think they're worse. They've lost Jordan Brooks on defense. Jordan Brooks tied for the team lead in run stuffs this year, second on the team in third and fourth down stops, another loss for them altogether. I know the Rams are not very good. I completely understand the sentiment of not wanting to bet the Rams. However, what the Rams do offensively, I think, is a bad matchup for the Seahawks, in the sense that the Seahawks have really struggled against running backs and tight ends in the passing game this year. And that's pretty much Baker Mayfield's MO, targeting running backs, targeting tight ends. I think the Rams offense has the potential of moving the ball in this game. And on top of that, their running game has kind of come together now with Cam Akers, who has been very good in the latter half of the season. Still don't see Seattle as a team, at least defensively, that you want to spot points with. I know that they've won by margin this year. They've covered some games. I get that, but a little bit too much for me. I made this game closer to 4.5. Do with that what you will. People asking about the McVay situation. I think this is truly very likely the last game that Sean McVay will be coaching for the Rams. I try not to bring like the motivational noise sometimes into these games, but I doubt that the Rams are just going to go out, not giving a shit for Sean McVay, personally. Motivation in general in Week 18. Remember, these are professional football players. A lot of these players have incentives tied into their contracts. Some people say an organization is tanking. We see this time and time. Look at the Jets years ago, winning the final 2 games of the year, cost themselves Trevor Lawrence by winning the final 2 games of the year. We see it pretty regularly where people convince themselves that a team has nothing to play for, therefore they're going to completely roll over. There will be instances where that happens. There are going to be times where a team just doesn't show for a game. However, don't make that the rule. It's more of an exception, is all I would say. Okay. Second game. Giants and Eagles. So Eagles get steamed out a little bit last night, I think, as the information about Davis Webb starting for the Giants started to leak. Adam Schefter confirmed that this morning, then confirmed that Jalen Hurts is starting for the Eagles, and we move from 14 up to 16.5. I just finished talking about how, motivation, I think, is like, I don't want to say overrated, but maybe over accounted for by a lot of people handicapping Week 18. This is one where it does you do get the sense that the Giants are mailing in this game. And that doesn't mean that backups won't play hard, but the Giants do not care about this game. Dealing with some big injuries on defense, Leonard Williams, Azeez Ojulari, Adoree Jackson out, truly does feel like a mail-it-in special for them. Philadelphia still without right tackle Lane Johnson, but remember, the Eagles rolled the Giants in their first matchup. It's very difficult for me to see a bunch of backups for the Giants being able to slow down this offense, unless Jalen Hurts is more injured than we know, or there's some sort of rust element or whatever. But seeing as how the Eagles have a bye next week, if they win this game, I do think that Jalen Hurts is going to play a lot of this game overall, if not the whole thing, because they do not want him to be, supremely rusty for when he does actually have a playoff performance. Very challenging for me to make a number on this game, as it is with a lot of the games in the latter half of the year. But I could not ever bet the Giants in this spot at this number, let's say. Obviously, the number dictates the play, but even at 16.5, for me, it's Eagles or nothing. Next game. Jets and the Dolphins. So Miami does fall into this category of need to win. Historically horrible teams to back in the final week of the season. Again, that's not to say that they can't cover. I don't like blind trends and whatever, and that's why I'm not just going in and locking in every single opposite team. However, I think that's worth noting. A lot of the games in Week 18 are extremely difficult to put a price on, right? Or to make an accurate number for. So a lot more uncertainty. Uncertainty is often good for the bettor in the sense that if you're a bettor that feels like you have a specific matchup or playing time or whatever pegged better than the rest of market, then you can find some edges. Personally, I don't feel that for many games this week, if any at all. A lot of the information that was, not public earlier in the week is kind of leaked out over the course of the week now. I don't think that there's going to be too many surprises today. The Jets, I've gone back and forth with, do I bet the Jets this week? And this is mainly Skylar Thompson needing to win by 4 points. Miami without Tua again. Skylar Thompson gets a start. Their left tackle, Teron Armstead, doubtful to play. Dealing with injuries on defense as well, but Bradley Chubb, Xavier Howard, Eric Rowe all got in back-to-back limited practice Thursday and Friday. They should be good to go. But the explosive pass rate for the Dolphins without Tua just drops off a cliff, whether that's been Skylar Thompson or Teddy Bridgewater. You need a quarterback that stinks to essentially move the ball on a very good defense. The problem is the Jets offense, you have Joe Flacco starting, which, by the way, that's fine. Joe Flacco's better than Zach Wilson. He's better than the Mike White we saw last week, who they shut down for the season because he's dealing with a rib injury. Like Mike White last week was unable to stand in the pocket and take a hit. Just couldn't do that. But you now get 3 starters on the O-line. Dwayne Brown, George Fant, Nate Herbig, all put on IR. Their backup guard for Nate Herbig is Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. Did not practice, limited this week. He's hurt. It's a challenge to see the Jets being able to move the ball consistently. Some injuries on defense as well. Brandon Echols, LaMarcus Joyner go to IR on defense. Could never, ever, ever, ever bet Miami in this spot. Ever. Did I mention that I could never bet Miami in this spot? Could not do it. But it's pretty rough state of the offense for the Jets and for Flacco behind that O-line. Challenging one. Couldn't end up pulling the trigger on the Jets here, although I think that they're the right side. I might revisit some of these games before I sign off today. Detroit Green Bay flexed into Sunday Night Football. So, line's 5, totals 49. Want to clarify one comment I made this week because people, are up in arms that I would suggest that it's unfair for this to be the Sunday Night Football game. So, the reason why I suggested that it's unfair for this to be the Sunday Night Football game and why I thought Jacksonville and Tennessee should have been the Sunday Night Football game is because Detroit could be eliminated by the time that this game starts. Now, do I think Dan Campbell is the type of coach to mail in a game? Absolutely not. If you gave me a list of every coach in the NFL, I'd say he's probably the least likely to mail in a game to keep Green Bay out of the playoffs in the final week of the season. With that said, there is an inherent advantage for Green Bay in this spot because the game means nothing to the Lions. That doesn't mean they won't try. However, in a regular NFL game, when players start to get injured or they roll an ankle in the game or they fall awkwardly or whatever happens, and they get the questionable tag when they go into the medical tent or whatever, they tend to get inserted back into the game if they can play. explain to me why the Lions would do that with players when the game means nothing. Jared Goff rolls an ankle on his first drop back and goes hobbling to the bench. You think Jared Goff is going to go back into the game when they have him signed for another 2 years at like $50 million total? Probably not going to happen. So that's where the inherent advantage comes in. Okay, it has nothing to do with the motivation. With that said, what the hell is this number? Like, I know Green Bay is going to need to win. There's no sense in betting the Lions now. The number's only going to improve, right? Because if Seattle wins, this is going to get steamed towards Green Bay. Whether you think that's right or wrong, whatever. If the Rams win, or it's close late in the game and the Rams have a chance to win, you keep your eye on that. You'll have a limited time frame where you can bet Detroit +5, but you will have that time frame. So I do like the Lions in this game. However, there's no sense in locking it in or betting it right now. And remember, the Lions do have a few starters questionable. Jeff Okudah, elbow injury, Deshaun Elliott, shoulder, Frank Ragnow, his foot. Maybe those guys don't play tonight if the game means nothing. And that doesn't mean the Lions won't try hard, but maybe the guys that are injured don't play tonight. I've accounted for everything here. I know the Lions' numbers outdoors. Indoors, they're 12th in success rate on offense. Outdoors, they're 18th. They fall from 45.5% to 41%. Significantly worse offense outdoors. But there's not that much separating these two teams. And when you look at the offenses that the Packers have faced recently in like this run, this resurgence, Miami with a quarterback that was concussed for half the game, the Rams, the Bears, the Vikings offensive DVOA, I don't have to tell you, look it up. They're one of the more overrated offenses and units in the entire league. I will like the Lions in this game, and I will leave it as that. Okay. Just really quickly going to get to the comments here and have a sip of coffee. Okay. Nothing that I haven't touched on yet, which is good. Next game, Browns and Steelers. Really unfortunate, in my opinion, that these two teams are playing one another. So market at Pinnacle is -2.5, shaded towards the Steelers. Total is at 40. If week 18 had been scheduled in a different way, where it was one of these teams playing Baltimore, obviously you're always going to be dependent on the number in the game, but probably a decent chance that I would have been betting one of these teams against Baltimore. For Cleveland, Jadeveon Clowney's out with basically a broken heart, sour grapes, whatever. It matters. He only has 3 sacks this year, but he does have 29 pressures. Denzel Ward, questionable for Cleveland, but 3 straight DNPs for him. Don't know about that. Jack Conklin, right tackle, out. That's going to hurt them a lot in pass protection. The big one on the Steelers injury report is Minkah Fitzpatrick. He did get a limited practice on Friday. Seems like a true game time decision. With the importance of the game, I figure that if he can play, he will play. Two teams that I'm generally high on relative to market, which makes it challenging. You get the Pittsburgh need to win factor. However, I think the Steelers are actually good. And I'm not like, if this number was on the opposite side of 3.5, Cleveland would draw a lot of interest from me because Pittsburgh's not a team that I think is built to win by margin. They've won by a lot of close games. Defense, Pickett not making big mistakes here and there. But they're not a team, like I said, that I expect to win by margin all too often. But now we're south of 3. Makes it a little bit more challenging. Deshaun Watson, in my opinion, watched the full Cleveland-Washington game last week. Probably the biggest dichotomy of first half, second half quarterback you would have seen all season in the NFL. Horrendous in the first half, much better in the second half. His receivers, especially Amari Cooper, did help him out a lot with yards after the catch, but looked like a completely different quarterback in that second half against the Washington Commanders last week. But this Pittsburgh team Now 8-2 with TJ Watt in the lineup. Hasn't been a murderer's row of opponents, but remember that early in the year when they were struggling, they were played one of the most brutal schedules I've seen in the first half of the year from anyone in a long time. Ultimately, I think the price in the game is fine. Wish I had something or another. Honestly, would be more inclined to play Pittsburgh if Denzel Ward ends up being out for the Cleveland Browns. And then, like, this absolutely bears zero weight in how I bet the game, but just feels like it's destiny for Mike Tomlin to have yet another non-losing season. I don't know how he does it. I honestly don't know. Mike Tomlin is the guy that I watch make, the craziest, and I will, say the dumbest sometimes in-game decisions, but he just finds a way to get the best out of these teams, man. Whether it was the corpse of Ben Roethlisberger, like Ben Roethlisberger at the end of his career, it got so sad to watch, and yet he somehow led that team to a 500 record. What they've gone through this year, Trubisky getting a rookie in and Pickett, injuries on D, man, very impressive coaching by Mike Tomlin. Master motivator. Reminds me a lot of Vrabel in a lot of senses. Okay. Houston and Indy. I'm not going to spend too much time here. Oh, by the way, Brandon, I'll never forget the time he tripped a player in the middle of the game. It was somebody on the Ravens who was returning a kickoff for like a touchdown. Can't remember who the kick returner was for the Ravens at that time. That was actually quite funny, I will say. Hey, man. As, Eddie Guerrero, one of my rest in peace, one of my favorite wrestlers used to say, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. That was pretty hilarious. Okay. Indy -3 across the board, very low total, which is not surprising. Not surprising when you consider that you have the 32nd, like the bottom two teams in offensive EPA per play and DVOA are head to head. You see a low total. Since week 10, when Jeff Saturday took over, the Colts are 31st in point differential, -86. The only team worse has been the Bears in that time. Now, Houston, for a team that's completely out of it, fairly healthy. Steven Nelson, 3 did not practice. He's tagged with an illness designation. Can't find anything. Nobody cares about this game. So I don't know if Steven Nelson's playing, but that'd be nice for them at corner. Indy's going to bless us with another Sam Ehlinger start. Kylan Granson is out. Stephon Gilmore didn't practice all week. I would consider him questionable at best. The real question here is, this is never Indy. Never Indianapolis to win by 4. Never. The real question is, does Houston mess up the first overall pick for themselves? And we have seen teams do this before, like I said with the Jets. And I'm sure ownership and management wants them to lose this game. However, I don't think that the players want to lose this game or care about losing this game. I agree with Randy here. I think Indy -3 assumes Houston is completely mailing it in for the number 1 pick. I think Indy is just as likely to be tanking to improve their draft position today and ruin the number 1 pick for the Texans. I don't know about the latter, but I'm going to come back to this one because I got some thinking to do. It's very appealing to get a field goal against Sam Ehlinger. Very appealing. How big of a check are they going to give Lovey to lose this game on the way up? I don't know. It's going to be, oh man, I'm going to ponder this for a little bit longer. I don't have many plays today. That's why I don't want to force anything. I don't want to, by the way, I do have a ton of plays today. I don't see a ton here right now to bet. Okay. Keep it moving. Arizona and San Fran, one of the later games today. Depend on your book, 14.5 or 14. Total of 40. This Arizona team, dear God. Like, okay, without their number 1 and number 2 quarterbacks. That's obviously Kyler Murray, Colt McCoy. So you get the David Blau experience again. Blau was fine last week, by the way, but without their number 1 and number 2 quarterbacks, without their top running back in James Conner, without their number 1 wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins, without a depth receiver in Robbie Anderson, looking at the rest of their offense from the beginning of the year, their starting tight end, Zach Ertz, is on IR. Their starting left tackle, DJ Humphries, is on IR. Their starting left guard, Justin Pugh, is on IR. Their starting center, Rodney Hudson, is on IR. This ain't a real NFL offense. How about on defense? Well, J.J. Watt playing his final game. He wants to compete. Opposite him, Zach Allen, he's out. Their nose tackle, Leki Fotu, questionable to play with a shoulder injury. Remember, that would be a massive loss because their original nose tackle, Rashard Lawrence, is on IR. Zaven Collins is out at linebacker. Very good cover linebacker, by the way. Might come in handy against the 49ers, who run a million things over the middle of the field. Both starting cornerbacks, Antonio Hamilton, Marco Wilson, are out. Remember, Byron Murphy already on IR. Safeties, Budda Baker, Chris Banjo on IR. That is a rough team. Like that team, if they play the entire year, are picking first overall. Now, San Fran's dealing with some injuries on their own defensive line. Kevin Givens is out. Eric Armstead, DNP on Friday, listed with a foot, an ankle, and an illness. Javon Kinlaw went DNP limited, knee and illness. They got a little bit of illness going around there. Dre Greenlaw is out at linebacker. So there is a path to success for Arizona to just hand the ball off a million times and maybe be able to get something going. Although, if I'm the 49ers, I'm probably just going to have David Blau try to beat me and not give up anything in the running game. The good news for San Fran, obviously Brock Purdy, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, all off the injury report. All of them are good to go. All of them playing this week as San Fran tries to cement the number 2 seed in the NFC. Don't know how you could bet Arizona. I make this game closer to 16.5. It's not a huge edge by any stretch of the imagination. I'm going to revisit a lot of this. I'm going to revisit a lot of games at the end of the show here. I can't have to be real with the audience. It's very important for me to do this show with integrity and transparency. If I had woke up today, would I bet the 49ers? The answer right now is I have no clue. It would be very close. So we'll revisit the entire thing at the end of the day, but very, very strongly to the San Francisco 49ers in this game. Okay, let's keep it moving. Chargers and Broncos. I mean, this is going to be painful for me to lose a Broncos bet from earlier in the week, but Denver's getting pumped right now in market up to 4, probably going to go even higher because Baltimore is mailing it in against the Bengals. Moving to -5 on the screen right now. This will update on betstamp very shortly in 1 second or so. And I hit the refresh. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more to say here. The Chargers are going to have nothing to play for in this game. If Baltimore loses, Baltimore is extremely likely to lose right now. That's all we're seeing here. Probably still have some room with Denver. If you want to bet it now, for time being, because the number's moving, I'm just going to part ways with this one. And hopefully it moves far enough where maybe, I mean, I don't think I could set up a middle that's worthwhile. Probably just hold the Denver position. But yeah, that's gonna fly. Those Cincy Denver parlays early in the week that Papa Cal's played, those were the big bomb bangers of the week. As soon as they moved the Denver Chargers game to late, which, by the way, like, talk about incompetence, right? Like, the Denver Chargers game was never going to happen at 1 o'clock. Like, that's a 10 a.m. or what 11 a.m. Denver Mountain Time? Yeah. 11 a.m. game. Like, they're not playing an 11 a.m. game on body clock. When does the NFL ever do that when they're not in Germany? That was never going to happen. But why did they not move the Bengals and Ravens to late so that they could be played at like, what is happening this year? Like, normally the NFL does this all properly in the final week of the season. It's very rare that they make like a fuck up like this one. But I don't know. Why not play them at the same time? So these, anyway, doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter. Baltimore's punting the game against Cincinnati. That's what you need to know. We move on. Tampa Bay and Atlanta. I'll spend all of, 30 seconds here. From what Todd Bowles has said this week, it looks like Tom Brady and many of the starters are going to play some amount of time against the Falcons. Who knows how long? Somebody probably knows out there. I certainly don't know. Considering the Falcons last week could barely beat at home David Blau and the Arizona Cardinals, who I just talked about, who have nobody on their roster. Who in God's name is going to line up to lay the 4 with Atlanta? Like, maybe we get a half out of Brady and the offense and the starters. Like, that's most likely scenario, right? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. You want to lay 4 with Desmond Ridder and the Falcons offense at this point? That's your prerogative. Good luck with that. Are you recommending Denver -4, Mr. Pizza? So I think -4 will end up being a good number. Do I know what's going to happen in that game? No. Does the thought of laying 4 with the Denver offense make me want to arm myself? Yes. Like, would I lay 4? I think 4 is, if I have to pick at 4, I'm picking Denver. But like, this number was, they were underdogs for 2 days in the week. Then they were a pick 'em, and then they were a small favorite of less than a field. Like, there was a million times to bet Denver the week. Now you get more information, and Baltimore is even less likely to win. So sure, there's going to be more Denver money, but God, I hate just betting like the worst of. I hate getting the worst of it, like the worst possible number. Hate that. Let me quickly just go through some comments here, make sure I haven't missed anything that is of, huge importance. Okay. We're starting to get the spammers in the YouTube stream. Got to issue the hard block. Not a big fan of the hard block. All right. Cowboys and Commanders. As the Eagles spread has gone out, so would doubt, you would figure so would like money on Washington, but Washington is a disaster. I mean, you have a head coach last week who has friggin' no clue that they're playing in an elimination game, and they start Carson Wentz. Man, I would like to bet Washington. However, is so tied to the Philadelphia game. I mean, maybe it's not, honestly. Mike McCarthy's a guy that's known to play starters in the final week of the season. So there could be a scenario where Philly's just blowing out the Giants and Dallas keeps their starters in there. I mean, Washington has friggin' crumbled in December and January every year under Rivera. Now they go to Sam Howell. For me, this is quite a big adjustment because Carson Wentz is terrible. How can Sam Howell be this much worse than Carson Wentz? Like, I know rookie quarterback, first start, whatever, but how can he be this much worse? I don't know that it's possible. Very strong lean on Washington. One thing I'll say before the playoffs here, a lot of people have been talking about the Dallas defense going into the playoffs. I do think that is a major problem. The secondary is terrible now. Since they lost Anthony Brown, they stink. And like we're talking about Josh Dobbs, Davis Mills, Gardner Minshew. These are the quarterbacks that they've played. Backup quality quarterbacks. That's an issue. The pass rush, I think, is being overstated because, yes, they only have 3 sacks since week 14. Yes, that's last in the league. They're first in pressure rate in that span. They generate a pressure on 45% of plays since week 14. So that'll probably correct itself. One of the reasons why is I think opposing quarterbacks are more confident that they can just throw it up, chuck it up to somebody, and the Dallas secondary can't do anything. That's a possibility. Okay. We might get through this whole board and I might not lock in a play. This is as I see the rest of these games here, this might be a first ever on the pizza buffet. A 0 play Sunday. Carolina, New Orleans. Yeah, I'm going to show you the price on this game, which is New Orleans -3.5 and a total of 41.5. And then I'm going to move on because I have not been able to ascertain what either of these teams is going to do in this game. And yep, that's about it for this one. I normally don't do that, but that's about it for this one. Buffalo, New England. Market has settled at Buffalo 8. Total of 43.5. Okay. Bill Belichick, obviously a great. Actually, let me start with the Buffalo situation, okay? Actually, let me start with my raw number on this game, which is Buffalo -9.2. That's what I make the spread in this game. It is incredibly challenging for me to figure out the Bills situation. Obviously, we had something unprecedented happen on Monday Night Football. Glad to see that Hamlin is doing a whole lot better now. But I don't know how that affects the Bills. And it's like a choose your own narrative, right? I think Buffalo is going to be rocking today. I think the fans there are going to be showing support. I think it's going to be a very emotional game for that team. I think that there will be an uplift. It's probably one of the largest home field advantages Buffalo will see, probably their largest of the season. With that said, you got to imagine that this situation pretty heavily impacted the team over the course of a week. I don't want to use the word distraction. That's not the right word to choose, but heads in a different spot. Practice schedule changes up. There's just an element of uncertainty here where I do not want to pull the trigger on Buffalo. Bill Belichick, one of the greatest coaches ever, but we have seen time and time again when he faces good mobile quarterbacks, whether it's Lamar Jackson this year or Justin Fields or Josh Allen, the last 3 times that they've played the Bills, which wasn't in like a windstorm, they get torched. It's happened pretty repeatedly. And you need Mac Jones to score here. And I just do not see that happening consistently enough. New England, for the most part this season, takes a step down in class and they win. They take a step up in class and they lose. Now they could lose this game by, within the number. And I get the motivation, win and you're in. I understand that. But it's Buffalo or nothing for me. Patrick asks, anything to make of Buffalo owning New England the last couple of years? Yes. They have an elite playmaking quarterback who is who can run the ball. The only reason I say one of the greatest when it regards to Belichick, just if we want to get into this debate now, is that he's lost it and has lost it for a long time now. And on top of that, we saw Brady have success immediately when he left New England, and the Patriots did not. So that's why. Absolutely not taking anything away from Belichick. He was a genius for a long time, and he was miles ahead of the rest of the coaches in the league for a long period of time. But he also had, Tony Dungy looked like a great coach for a long time when he had Peyton Manning as his quarterback. Let's put things into context and perspective here. And now Tony Dungy's advocating for punts on 4th and inches at the 36-yard line when he's doing Sunday Night Football, the pregame. Okay. I actually can't even believe they won a Super Bowl with Tony Dungy. Bengals and Ravens steamed out to 11 now. Nothing more to say here. Nothing more to say. Baltimore, Mark Andrews inactive, Tyler Huntley inactive. You got the Anthony Brown experience. Hope everyone grabbed the Bengals -7 or 7.5 earlier in the week. Yeah. What more is there to say? The Ravens offense is scoring 12 points a game with Tyler Huntley. I saw Anthony Brown play, and he's worse. Don't see a huge path to success here, and doesn't seem like the Ravens care. That to me is not a narrative. It just seems like the Ravens are locked into where they're going to be. They're probably going to play the Bengals in the playoffs. Why show the Bengals anything? Prepare for them for next week. Can you give your read on Panthers Saints? I don't know. If I had a coin here, I would just flip it, is what I would do. And that would be my read. Final game on the card. Vikings and Bears. Okay, this one's gone back and forth and back. So all the early Minnesota money, which was, pretty awful line to open this Minnesota -1, all things considering, gets out to the opposite side of 7. Then there's news that I think it was Friday's practice where Nick Mullins was taking some snaps with the first team offense. Viking starters will play, but who knows how long. Nathan Peterman, he ain't it. But if it's Nathan Peterman against Nick Mullins, by the way, Mullins is actually a very good backup. Obviously, I'd have some interest in the Bears +7 regardless, backup versus backup. However, another one on the card of I don't know. If you're in stale lines pools, just use the closing line to make your pick. I'm more inclined to take the Bears here, but nope, hard pass. Okay, refresh of the board. I'll repeat my thoughts on every single game. Rams and Seahawks. I like the Rams in this game from I think they're the right side perspective. I make the game closer to 4.5. Not a significant edge that I think is worth betting, but that's that. I'm higher on the Rams offense than market. I also see some small value on the over 41 in this game. Not a ton. That's where I stand on that. Giants and Eagles. Feels like the Eagles price might still be a little bit short. Am I in a rush to lay 16.5? No. Really quickly, just want to see the first half line in the game. Yeah, 10. No, thank you. No, thanks. Jets and Dolphins. Jets are probably the closest I came to locking in any play this morning. Ultimately, I shall choose to sit on the sidelines. But Skylar Thompson by margin, no, thank you. Those Jets O-line injuries are horrendous, though. Horrendous. Lions. I like the Lions. I'm just choosing not to lock them in now because the likelihood that we get a better line on the Lions is high. You can refer back to my commentary on this game earlier if you want to watch the replay of it. But better off waiting because if Seattle wins, Green Bay's probably going out to -7, somewhere in that range. That's just a wild guess, by the way. And if the Rams win, you could probably bet the Lions very quickly. Just really got to be have it lined up at your sports book and ready to go. And as soon as that Rams goes final, start mashing Lions because that number is going to come down. Mash it. Browns Steelers, no strong opinion. Lean a little bit more to the Steelers now. Lean just slightly to that end, but the line is fine. Houston, I came close to doing it with Houston. Came close. God, Sam Ellinger to win by 4. No, thank you. Show a little bit of value on the under in this game. Not a ton. The state of the offenses is horrendous. Arizona, San Fran. It could only be San Fran for me in this game. I mean, they played in Mexico earlier this year. Just an absolute destruction. Not that every game is going to go like the previous one, but only San Fran. Chargers, Denver. Okay, settled in at 4. I have no idea what to make of this game now. But again, as you know, I preached off the top. Got to get out ahead of this stuff as quickly as possible. Falcons and Bucs, no opinion, but no thanks on Falcons 4. Commanders, probably the right side. Carolina, New Orleans, your guess is just as good as mine. Slight lean to Buffalo over New England. Cincy and Baltimore, I don't know where this is going to end up, but again, now is not the time where I would be betting Cincy. We're starting to see all that information reflected in market. Kind of missed the boat. Chicago, Minnesota, nothing of value. Okay, let's answer some questions here, if there are any. Is Cliff coaching in college next year? I don't know. He might have Kyler getting hurt might be a scapegoat for him. I don't know what his contract is like. Teams don't typically like to pay out multiple years, though. The line stays at 5. Would you still bet Detroit before kickoff? I don't think it will stay at 5, but yes, I do. I just bet Houston +3. Can't wait to find out I'm an idiot when Lovey pulls starter second half with a lead. Monday Night Football, Georgia -12. Thoughts? I'm not a college football bettor as much anymore. I just don't have the time to keep up with it. We played some under in this game at 63, 62.5. That's all I can tell you. TCU's like the Minnesota Vikings, right? They seem to have the same MO as the Vikings. Everybody counts them out every week, and then they continue to win. They just haven't found that loss yet. Yeah. Okay, great question. I want to talk about this. Texans, a decent teaser play. Of all the weeks in the NFL season where I would not want to play teasers, it's first week and last week, but more so last week. The whole notion of playing a teaser, and especially those of you who do the Wong teasers and stuff like that, the mathematically savvy and sound teasers on Sundays right before kickoff, that's great in a lot of the weeks. However, in week 18, there is no way the market is as efficient as it is in previous weeks. People are just guessing on a lot of this shit. So when people start to tease these games, you're relying on the market number being an efficient number, I would caution anyone with the final week teasers. You honestly have no clue. Like, some of the stuff looks great in theory, but just be careful with that, because the mathematical teaser, you're hoping that the market is efficient, and then you're just going to use it to your advantage, do some basic math, and you're going to get, a plus EV bet. Not the case in the final week, in my opinion. So my advice, avoid the teasers in the final week of the season. I know Minnesota will be a popular one this week. Cleveland will be a popular one. Buffalo will be a popular one. Cleveland, would it surprise me if like they didn't give a shit? Like Deshaun Watson, same situation. I mean, at least they have a good backup in Brissett, but you get teams in these situations, right, where it's like, okay, the game actually doesn't mean anything to them. Minnesota too, like Nick Mullins could get hurt and they're like roll an ankle and they're like, no, let's just sit down on the bench. Like, there's too much that's going on here. Bills are probably the best leg, but there's a lot of uncertainty there as well. Okay. Really quickly. Props. I played 3 players this week. I played Kenny Pickett under 17.5 rushing yards at minus 115. Small one there. I played Ramondre Stevenson under 49.5 rush yards at minus 110. I played Tyler Boyd under 36.5 receiving yards at minus 115. And then this morning, I came back and I played the over 29.5 at minus 110, trying to set up a potential middle on 30 to 36 there, which I think is a very high likelihood in terms of his final receiving yardage. Kenny Pickett under rushing yards, Ramondre Stevenson under rush yards, Tyler Boyd. I played back on the over this morning. Maybe just caution that altogether at this point. A reminder, first of all, if you're still watching this stream on YouTube and you haven't clicked the like button yet, click the like button. As my friend Nick Costas would say, don't be a freeloader. It's all I ask, that people can find us in the YouTube algorithm. Click the like, subscribe to the channel. Extremely important. More announcements coming this week around what we're doing with Forward Progress going forwards for the playoffs. But we're probably going to do some longer form shows throughout the week. Pizza Buffet is not changing for the playoffs, but stay tuned for announcements on which day I'm going to be doing the Pizza Buffet. Most likely next week, we'll be looking at doing it on the Saturday rather than the Sunday. All depends on the schedule that comes out. But thank you very much for everyone who tuned in. Apologies for the lack of plays today. Again, it's my goal to create honest and transparent content. I don't want to throw out bets that I wouldn't make myself. With that said, I think I covered every game with the exception of Carolina, New Orleans, which, if you want to bet it, it's your prerogative. You do whatever you want to do with your own money. But for the most part, I think that's it. Back tonight, Forward Progress, 10:30 Eastern time on this channel. Me, Clive, looking ahead to next week's playoffs. We'll predict where we think the lines are going to end up after they open up later on tonight. This has been Forward Progress, presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook here on the Hammer Betting Network. Enjoy the final week of the season. We'll see everyone tonight. Peace out.